Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Popcorn Square. Today, we're going to talk about the Actors Strike Back. I am your host, Kage.
With Neff.
And Buttons.
And today, we are talking about the strike going on. Yes, that's right, folks. We are bringing back the strike. I thought we were done with this, right, guys?
Right.
This is, but this is a different strike. The SAG-AFTRA strike went on last year in Hollywood, had a great effect on movies. A lot of movies were delayed. A lot of scripts were rewritten. Writers weren't getting paid what they should be. Actors weren't paid what they should be, and then some. There was a lot of focus on AI. But one thing that strike didn't cover was video games, and that's what's going on. That's what we're talking about today. So just kind of give a little synopsis of what's going on is when the strike was settled with actors and stuff, video games weren't included in that. And so what's happening is voice actors, because now, in the 90s, you had graphics, you had text on the screen, and that was your game. But as time has gone on, we have real actors. Now we have mocap. Some video games even show like cutscenes of people, of real people. And so you have acting going on in there and voice acting going on there. And unfortunately, with AI becoming a thing, don't tell Neo. No.
Right.
Not the Neo from the new movies, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, like video, like my opinion is, and I think we can all agree that if you work on something, I don't care if you're a janitor, I don't care if you're a CEO, I don't care what you do for a living. If it's contracting, if you work on something, you should be paid for it. In the entertainment world, if you produce, if you brought out snacks to the actors, if you are the actor, you did voice acting, you should be credited appropriately. You should be paid appropriately. And unfortunately, that's not what's going on now. It's kind of scary that you don't have to be in the industry to do this. You can go on YouTube right now, or even on your computer right now, and there's a thing where you can type and an AI voice will say whatever you type. But let's say we up the budget on that. What if now we have voices of celebrities, and now I type whatever I want, and now I can say, that celebrity just voiced something I just created in 5 minutes. But that actress isn't getting credit for it because I just typed it up. And the fact that technology is up and coming and people can just do that, and I'm just talking in a small sense of what you can do on a weekend if you're a hobby, if that's your hobby, whatever. But when you have a bigger, grander budget, that's really scary. In terms of video games, I don't even have to call the actor or actress anymore. Now I can just type in whatever dialogue. If the AI is good enough, it can do the voice inflections perfectly, match up, and you won't know. You know what I mean? But I don't care how good the technology is. That's wrong. If you're going to use somebody's voice like that, never mind the fact that you're taking the soul out of the game, the humanity out of the game, you got to give credit to those people that those voices come from, that likeness comes from. I just talked about mocap. If you're going to scan somebody's face into a game or their voice, then you need to give that person credit, period. There's no negotiation. You give them credit. So I agree with the strike. I stand with them on this. I'm not in the industry. We're not in that industry. But give credit where credit's due is what I'm saying. And that is what's going on.
Very good point. Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Very interesting. Me and Kage were just speaking about how basically we think voice acting is the backbone of video games. So very interesting to see how long this is prolonged and how this affects the industry as a whole. Obviously, if there's any strike of any kind, that pushes a lot of projects back. And, that it stresses out the studios because they obviously have deadlines, they have games that they want to put out, and they want to make sure that they can do it, and everybody's basically in a good state of mind when making these games, because these things are very important, especially for their brand and the video game industry being one of the biggest entertainment industries of all.
It's a
Very
multi-billion-dollar
interesting. So
industry.
big that it is, like we talked about multiple times, seeping into other industries and taking up some market share there. So yeah, this is a pretty big strike. I want to see where this goes. I would definitely like to see the details of the contract they agree upon when it actually ends up going all the way through. But this is something that we knew was probably coming up. I've heard just from other people that the voice acting thing was going to be an issue. And so, yeah, back again. I kind of talked about how I think it will impact the industry as a whole. Like I said, I think depending on how long this goes on, this is going to push back a lot of projects, and probably it's going to affect a lot of projects that people want to have in their hands too. So that's actually going to be very interesting as well. Is the consumer prepared to be very patient for this? Does the consumer have empathy? As Kage was saying, he's a consumer, but he actually sees empathy, and he's saying these guys need to be credited for what they do, and they need to be paid sufficiently for what they do. So he kind of understands that, but that doesn't mean everybody thinks like him. So I'm sure you're going to get some people that aren't very happy with it, but I think it's something that needs to happen. And yeah, voice acting is a huge part of video games. So this is definitely going to put some things on hold. Buttons, what do you think about this?
So I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there as far as, video games to me and voice acting. It's certainly something that is very much an intellectual property. Your voice, your tone, your inflection, everything that you bring to the table, that is something that is unique to you as an individual. When we talked before about the writing and acting strikes that happened, I brought up the fact that, one of the biggest battles early on that, to my knowledge, in terms of intellectual property, back when the technology was changing, was Back to the Future 2. So the actor that had played Marty McFly's father, I don't remember his name, Crispin Glover? Mm-hmm. Yes, Crispin, I believe. So he sued the studio for using his face in the movie when he declined the role, for the sequel. I don't know if it was a conflict, like he just couldn't, go into it, or he genuinely just declined the role, said, no, I don't want to come back and do it. But they used his likeness in the movie, and he sued, and he won, because he's like, this is my face, this is my livelihood. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of, the technology now with AI, CG, all of these different things that have come out, that the strikes previously focused on, such as, again, using the likeness, using, intellectual property in terms of your ideas and your vocal patterns and manner of speech, that can be recreated by these intelligent, systems that have been, steadily getting better and better as we've, developed the technology. Now it's got to the point where you don't know if it's real or fake unless you look very closely. You're like, oh, look, this actor has three extra fingers, or, hey, that seems off. Like, why is their eye slanted up or down like an extra inch from normal? It's hard to tell. And sometimes with the different audio that we hear nowadays too, you sit there and you're like, oh, is that person speaking? It kind of sounds like them, but maybe it's not. And
we had that with Furiosa there, right, Kage? Mm-hmm. It's like, is that Charlize Theron's voice? Mm-hmm. Sounds like her. Thinking that Taylor Joy's good, but that sounded too closely like Charlize Theron.
I'll do another one for you. Now, granted, this was authorized. It's not strike-worthy, but just an example. Insidious. The prequel, because I've seen all the movies and they all bleed together. When they had a flashback of Elise and they showed a younger version of her, the psychic, coming in, but it was the old lady's voice dubbed over it. That's kind of an example. Now, that's a good example where the actress was on board, she was
Yeah, I
paid,
remember
she
that
was
scene.
credited, but like examples of stuff like that in gaming. So flipping it back to gaming, it's even worse because I can take your voice and it's all computer generated characters someone in a art studio made. I can do whatever I want if the AI is good enough.
Right.
But is it ethical? No, it's not.
Right.
And that's where the strike comes in.
Right. And so the point that I was trying to make with this particular strike that's going on is you already are lending your voice to an animated or computer generated image or character, a scene or something in a video game where typically voice actors are behind the scene characters to begin with. Yes, we have famous voice actors, but all of the little background characters and the lesser known voice actors that are just out there that maybe they dub foreign content and bring it to market in the US and stuff like that. All these studios are doing this with these characters, and they should be protected under the same
Yes.
laws and rules that we have for regular actors and writers, because again, even though it's not Charlize Theron or Kevin Hart or somebody who's famous and out there and a recognizable name, doesn't mean that they don't deserve the same protections.
Correct. So, do you think that these strikes, as far as in entertainment, are going to be more normal, as far as they pop up a lot more often than they were before?
So you mean like striking becomes more the normal?
Right.
I mean, I know that.
I think the only way, and this is a possibility, and more than likely this will happen, but I think if you start seeing the big name players in entertainment continue to make a lot of money, and the people that work underneath them doing the behind the scenes work, stuff like that, I think if they continue to be kind of stagnant in how much they make, then the strikes will be normalized. And we'll kind of talk about that with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, I feel like.
But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I feel like as far as them becoming more frequent, I think it's a matter of the technology. As the technology changes and it becomes possible to do more things, people are going to have to stay on top of.
Yeah, I agree with that
what is
100%.
allowed,
Yeah.
What's allowed and what they need to, add for protection, for
And the loopholes,
I mean,
they'll find them.
well, let me just use this as an example. So in the United States, we have places like Walmart, these big box stores, Amazon, all of these, that we usually import a lot of our product from out of the US. If you want to go buy a t-shirt that was made in the United States, do not expect to spend less than $50 for a t-shirt.
Sad but true.
And the fact of the matter is because you're paying for U.S. wages. The labor that's involved with that is, attached to the amount of,
The price point.
yeah, the price point as far as, the amount of labor that goes into it, the materials that are purchased, all of that fun stuff, translates into that higher market. Now, me personally, I make handmade items, and I can tell you right now that anything that's handmade in the United States is going to be significantly more expensive than something that is made outside of the US, because they're not paying those workers US wages. And that is the reason why they do it, folks. With this, it's another way for these content creators, and by content creators, I mean studios, to pump out a product cheaper. That's what it comes down to. It's not because, they're trying to hurt small businesses, or they're doing it maliciously because they don't like an actor or an actress. They're looking at the bottom line. How much money can I make my investors? Because that's what it comes down to. They don't care about who's going to sit down and watch this movie in terms of oh, are they going to be happy or unhappy with the fact that I used AI? They're looking at, can I get them to come and pay the prices so that when I go back to the boardroom and I, tell them how much money that they made on this movie or this project, this video game or whatever, is it going to be a positive? Is the company going to be happy with the profits that I made? And AI and different, green or not CGI effects and things that they're doing where they're taking somebody else's intellectual property, whether it be their voice or their face or anything, that is what they're trying to do. They're just trying to basically find a cheaper way to make a good quality product. So same with outsourcing, and you're buying your clothing or electronics or whatever from another country. They're trying to outsource performers,
right?
Writers, actors. They're just trying to let the computer do it because it's cheaper to let the computer do it. The computer's not finicky. They're not going to be like, oh, I can't go on today. I'm so out of it. I need my time. And
I was
and,
drinking. I went on a drunk binge this weekend. I kind
Right,
of needed
right.
to chill.
Doing that
or
with
the
visual
writers, we
effects.
just can't think of, we keep hitting the wall, as writer's block,
Right,
things
right.
like that. Or even just holding out for more money in general. They're like, hey, this show is making you guys billions of dollars and I'm still making, pennies on the dollar. How about, you throw me a bonus or, raise my cost per episode or whatever, my pay per episode.
Yeah.
And it ends up becoming a greed issue is what it is. And I'm not saying that there weren't people who were getting underpaid. That's not what I'm saying at all. Because usually the lower down the totem pole you get, the more, inequity you find in terms of, wait a minute, I'm doing just as much work as that person, but I'm getting paid less. Or, why is it that they get so much more than me, and their name is stamped across the thing just because they're the producer or they're, first credited on the roster.
Right.
So, actors and actresses have typically had to look at the fact that, I might be out there putting just as much work into my performance as one of the main stars, but the only thing I'm going to get at the end of the day is maybe a nomination. Like maybe I'll get Best Supporting Actress nomination.
Yeah, I don't think
What
this
do you
is.
think, Kage?
I don't think this is over in a long shot. Not at all. I'm glad for them that this is going on, that this attention is being brought up. Because just like Button said, as time goes on, the technology is going to advance and it's going to get crazier and crazier, and that fight is not going to end for them. I have a feeling we haven't seen the end of this.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially moving forward. How many hiccups are going to have going into future years? Like, oh, another one. Oh, another one. Oh, we got to push this back. Because that SAG-AFTRA strike, that pushed back movies how long?
At least a couple years, 2-3 years.
See, very impactful.
And it's not still completely recovered from
Oh,
that
no, it
either.
hasn't. Like, if you look at 2024, the movies that we have seen, that we've discussed here on this podcast, 2024 hasn't been that great. And I cannot help, and this is just my personal opinion, I cannot help but think that that strike had something to do with it. Because if you look at movies in 2019, like, cinema was killing it back then. 2024 has been an absolute dumpster fire in terms of films. We had Dune 2, we had Deadpool, we had Inside Out 2, and I think that might be it.
Yeah, as far as
That's
big money
like
makers.
the big
yeah.
money makers. Oh, and wild card, Bad Boys. I like Bad Boys. Bad Boys.
Didn't make the money they wanted.
It didn't make the money they wanted.
Okay,
I'll
okay.
throw- I'll push that out.
It didn't do bad. It didn't do
Furiosa was
bad.
good. Furiosa was good, but it didn't
We're
make the
talking
money.
about
Bad Boys.
performance.
So
Well, yeah.
I'll go with Despicable Me 4 to substitute Bad Boys.
Okay.
Just for performance, not
Okay.
quality.
Well, I'm just saying,
'Cause
like,
I'm pretty sure Bad Boys quality was fine.
yeah, I'm talking about the best movies that I have seen this
quality
year.
wise.
It's like, because most of the time I'm going to the movies, this sucks, this is stupid, and I walk out of the theater like, oh, But like the cream of the crop, the really good movies that I'm like, I might even buy that. Or the really good movies that I'm like, I will pay to go see that again, which I have. I've seen Deadpool twice, guys. Go see it. If you haven't seen it, go see it. But yeah, kind of. So moving on from that, we gotta talk about.
Comic-Con.
We gotta talk about
What
Comic-Con.
do you guys think about that? Anything that you found interesting other than Robert Downey Jr. being Doctor Doom, which we actually haven't talked about as a group? I've talked about it. What do you guys think about that?
Here's what I'm gonna say. You have to be careful when it comes to, and this goes with video games and movies.
Yep.
When you have a franchise that's well established, you have characters, actors that are well established as such. When you start changing things, you piss people off. Okay? Mortal Kombat's been around for 30-something years. They made a new movie for the first time in ages, and they introduced Cole Young. And gamers got pissed because there's no such thing as Cole Young. Or when you watch 30 years of Iron Man, that's Tony Stark, a.k.a. Robert Downey Jr. We know him as that. That's beaten into our skulls at this point. And now he's going to be Doctor Doom? Yeah, people are there. Yeah, there's going to be some backlash with that.
Well, not only that is, I will just say this is back, and I don't know the exact years, but Iron Man and Fantastic Four were in direct competition with each other in terms of the times that they came out. You would have had the first Iron Man come out. And
2008,
and I think Fantastic Four was like 2004, maybe?
the first one.
Yeah,
the
the-
second one come out.
Intentional?
Well, no, I just mean like in terms of, if you're going to use an actor to play Doctor Doom, which I actually, the first Fantastic Four movies that they did, and Rise of the Silver Surfer was the sequel to that, I liked who they had playing Doctor Doom. Just his version of it, I guess, he has a certain look, and he has a certain, presence on screen. And not to say that Robert Downey Jr. can't provide a strong presence on screen. We just know he did it with Iron Man. He is Tony Stark for a lot of people, and it won't change. It's kind of like Hugh Jackman being Wolverine. Like, nobody's going to fill his shoes in terms of the majority of audience. But Silver Surfer, or not Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four,
I heard things on, I don't know if I sent you guys the videos, but they're saying Doctor Doom has been whitewashed.
Oh.
Because he's really Eastern European.
Yeah. So Fantastic Four, the first one was 2005. So I want to say that Iron Man, we talked about,
It's 2008.
Yeah, 2008 would have been the first Iron Man. But that would have meant that Silver Surfer, because I think it came out, Rise of the Silver Surfer was 2007. So you would have had those movies leading directly into Iron Man. I don't know, like, to me, like,
I just think people.
they are bringing back superheroes, Tony Stark, as,
You think it's desperate?
Well, no, I feel like Silver Surfer was kind of like studios dipping their toes in the water to see if superhero movies could make the comeback. Robert Downey Jr. solidified it. They were like, yep, we've got an audience. I feel like, people liked Fantastic Four. They did not care as much for the sequel. But as far as Robert Downey Jr. coming in and playing Doctor Doom, it just gives me the desperation vibes.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels like a cash grab. Like, hey, audience members, you remember how much you loved Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man?
It's funny you say that. I think
know?
a lot of people, and they're not taking into account. I think there's people that don't like it, and there's people that like it. But I think even the people that like it now, when they go watch this movie, they're gonna have a hard time differentiating Tony Stark and basically
No.
Robert Downey as Tony Stark and Doctor Doom. They're gonna be like, "That's Iron Man." Like, I just see
Yeah.
Iron Man. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's going to affect it negatively.
Yeah.
And me and Kage talked about the release schedule, and we talked about it as well, Buttons. May 1st, they're supposed to have Doomsday out, and it's like, I don't believe they even have a script. It's like, I said to Kage, they should start trying to film this movie in 5 months from now. Like, they need to film this movie and get it through its paces, make sure everything is taken care of with the Russo brothers and Robert Downey, make sure the story is intact, because like I said, not only are you bringing back Robert Downey Jr. as a whole new character, right? Now you have to try to top Avengers because you're using that name, so that name carries weight. It's a lot you got to try to put together, and for them to try to do this in a year and 7-8 months, and you don't have a script yet, gonna be kind of tough.
Right.
Gonna be tough. So
Yeah, and
I do think
you
it
have
is-
Avengers attached to it, and
We
then
have,
what did you do? You brought in Robert Downey Jr., who is a huge part of the Avengers franchise, not just the movie, the franchise.
Right.
And I am Iron Man. That is iconic in cinema history. People haven't forgotten that, folks. Not too soon. Too soon. So I think they could have went with somebody else, but play devil's advocate here. Robert Downey Jr. has established himself as a really great actor in the superhero genre. I'm willing to be open-minded. Let's see what he brings to the table.
Yeah.
This could be. I did see some speculation online on Reddit that they could be rolling with the parallel universe thing, like Doctor Strange, and maybe in a different. This takes place in a different Earth, so to speak.
I
don't know.
spoke with somebody else about the What If comics, and with that, I guess there is a version where Iron Man,
Goes evil.
is Doctor Doom.
There's that
So
version, right?
there's
There's infamous
a
Iron
version
Man,
out there.
and then there's a version where Tony Stark is in a coma, and then Doctor Doom just becomes Iron Man.
Yeah, kind of like a body
There's
swap.
different-
There's like a body
Okay,
swap
so
thing,
there is
like a
something
freaky,
to this.
like a Freaky Friday
Right,
kind of
right,
thing,
right.
where like somehow their consciousness gets swapped, and he's in the body. Tony Stark's in the body of Doctor Doom, but it's they wiped his memory, so he doesn't remember that he's Tony Stark. So, but the Doctor Doom is in Tony Stark's body, and he
it's like his
remembers.
consciousness.
Yeah. So it's a weird scenario, and I'm not saying that the idea isn't interesting, but I don't know if that's what they're going with this movie. If it's going to be
And then who's the Avengers?
parallel. It's going to be like
Yeah.
a parallel universe
Yeah.
kind of thing, or if it's going to be because the original Fantastic Four, it wasn't like they pulled it out of that same world. They were just focusing on the story of Fantastic Four. Whereas when we've seen some of these other movies, they'll actually hearken in and say like, oh yes, here's it all is happening within the same universe, within the same version of Earth or whatever. When
Yeah.
you start talking about multiverse conversation, so I'm like, okay, so maybe there's a multiverse factor going into it. Maybe it's
No.
going to go off of this what
Do you
if
think this
comic.
new Fantastic Four is going to jump into that?
Oh, you mean into the multiverse?
No, as far as being the springboard or like the jumping board off into this new Doctor Doom.
Oh, so I mean,
Do you think you think it's gonna be like a Thanos thing where he's in the background, but they don't actually show that it's Robert Downey Jr.? He's just
more
there.
like a The Voice or
Correct.
pulling the strings
Correct.
behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah, or like
Don't
he's
look
doing
behind the
something
curtain,
in a
people,
lab.
and then like at the very end,
Right,
like
right.
you see him and he's like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, do you think
I
they
mean,
do that and they focus on a different story? Did you see the clips for Fantastic Four?
I have not seen
There
the
was, like,
clips.
a
All I've
clip
seen is
with-
like
where people
Pedro
record
Pascal
things at
and,
Comic-Con. Vanessa Kirby.
yeah, Vanessa
So
Kirby,
they
yeah.
I guess someone was recording on their phone and they kind of showed some footage.
Oh, a little
from
bit
the
of
film.
little,
So yeah,
peeks.
you see, Reed Richards, who's Pedro Pascal guy. It's not a spoiler. He's kind of talking. It looks like it's almost set in like the '60s. So he's
Yeah.
having like a class and he's like, kids, this is how this works. Da 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 da. There's a couple other scenes. It's like they're going into space, almost like a NASA project.
Right.
And then there's a big figure that comes and looks into a lab, and people are saying that's Galactus.
Oh yes, I know.
I don't know if that's Galactus.
Looks pretty damn like Galactus.
Yeah.
That might be what they're
I
going
can't
for.
see
It's-
too
it's
much.
It's too
I saw
soon
it,
to tell.
right, I saw it, and I'm like,
100%.
okay, because obviously you would think it's going to be Galactus. There's not too many other characters like that walking around. It's a huge character, but then Galactus would have to shrink himself to get down to Earth like that too. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. So I was like, okay, if they're showing him here, that's cool. I would have liked if they didn't show Galactus. They don't. They just show his eyes, right? So
Right.
you can't like identify that it's him. But obviously, you know, if you know the comics and you know even the other films, you know, okay, more than likely that's Galactus. You know what I mean? So you know, we'll see what happens when they actually put out an official trailer. But I was just trying to figure out like what do they really do as far as Robert Downey's character, because really, from what I saw in the timeline that they have for these releases, they haven't talked about too much. Typically, you know, they show the timeline of what they're going to release. And to me, based off what they showed, there wasn't a timeline anymore, but they talked about Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and then I think they're doing some shows on Disney Plus. But
Yeah.
I'm really trying to figure out what's going to tie into this whole new Avengers climax story with just Fantastic Four, because that's not enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Thunderbolts has nothing to do with
Yeah.
Fantastic Four.
So
Doom's character. So I wonder what they really have. They're gonna have to have a lot more to build up into this film. And like I said, you have to put out multiple films to build into this film, and then Secret Wars will probably do what it does on its own. But I think Secret Wars is going to be contingent upon Doomsday. And I'll also say I think Secret Wars is going to be a much better project, because that's something they can actually pull straight out the comics. You know what I mean? And really run with that. But I just want to see how many films they have lined up to really get people interested in Avengers Doomsday, other than saying Robert Downey's back and the Russo brothers are back. That's only going to work for so long. What do you got, Kage?
well, I was just gonna say that I'm gonna give this a chance. I think I want to see it out of curiosity. Yeah, well, yeah, Fantastic Four.
So both?
Yeah, I want to see it. I'm not like, oh my God, like I was with Deadpool. I have to see this.
But you're willing to give it a shot.
But I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, hoping that they can break the Fantastic Four curse.
Yes.
Let's see how many movies, 4, 5, 10. Let's see how many
This
times
would be
we
the
can tell.
fourth, so maybe
Hey!
it's the charm.
I mean,
Maybe this is their charm. Four.
to be fair, I remember watching the remake of Fantastic Four, and you know, I know some people were on the fence about the movie. Some people liked it. Some people didn't care for it. I mean, obviously, it's a much younger group than what the movies that we had back in the early 2000s, or you know, what was it? What did we say? 2004, 2007.
Yep.
So I watched it again to give it another shot to see if, like, you know, from watching it back several years ago, to give it another, you know, fresh perspective on it. My feelings have not changed. I still am not a huge fan of it. And I think it's because mainly, you know, if you were gonna do something with it, it just didn't feel like they hit the same, like casting, like felt weird. They
Casting
didn't.
was off.
they-
Story was odd.
Yeah, it just
Yep.
they just didn't work
That's
together.
not the way to do it.
Not to mention,
Basically, they could have did without this.
yes,
You could take this out and just say, hey, okay, we got backlash on Silver Surfer.
Right.
Let's not do this again like this, because we can't build it out into anything.
Right.
Where this seems like a more calculated route. This is the springboard. This is the next film. That's the next film.
And
Where
I
I feel
know-
like this is just kind of on an island.
well,
like,
and I
they
know
just did it just because.
I know that the practical effects were kind of weird for what's his name, the Thing, or
Yeah.
yeah, the big rock guy,
yeah,
the
the
thing,
Thing.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but full CGI thing was not hitting for me. Like he was too weird looking. He felt out of place in that world. Like it looked too CGI. Whereas the practical thing, you're sitting there going, okay, yeah, it looks weird. You can tell it's all prosthetic and he's in a suit and everything else. But I still felt like that looked more realistic and
Tricky character
more
to
in
bring
there.
on screen.
yeah.
Tricky character, and we'll kind of discuss what I think they should do with that character. I don't know if you guys agree, but we'll talk about that. Both you guys saw Borderlands.
Yes.
Let's quick
Borderlands.
review that.
Yeah.
Kage, what'd you think? Quick thoughts, and then we'll run the buttons, and we'll close out.
Oh, I can talk about that forever.
We might have to do a part 2, guys, on this Borderlands. We might have to.
Might. So I will try my best to make this cute little package or whatever. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the games. I've played 1, 2, and 3, so naturally I had to go see the movie. I went and saw it yesterday. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. You know, it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, but it was still pretty bad. I have no desire to buy it. I have no desire to ever see it again. The jokes really fell flat for me. Even the cast was totally miscasted terribly, but even looking past that, the jokes were not funny. I mean, they had Jack Black starring as Claptrap, and I love Jack Black. Not very funny in this. Kevin Hart playing as Roland. He surprised me. He wasn't spitting off the one-liners, the stupid comedy things. He was actually playing Roland in a little bit more serious way than I thought he would. I did not like Lilith as Kate Blanchett. I did not like that for the many reasons everyone on the internet has been saying, and I have said before. You picked 60-somethings playing 30-somethings. You know what I mean? And you have Tanis in there as Jamie Lee Curtis. Tanis is supposed to be about the same age, if not a smidge older than Lilith in the games. You know what I mean? And she's talking in the movie like, I known you since you were yay high. It might as well have said that in the movie. I'm like, you can't make me believe that. You're old. You know what I mean? No. The positive things I can say about it is the look of Pandora. I believe that. That was good. The look of the costumes. That was good. The cars, the monsters. They pulled that straight out of the game. So I give them props. They did a good job with that. As far as characters that I liked, I would say Krieg and Marcus, who's a very minor role. He did that because he's supposed to be the character that gives the Vault Hunters their weapons, and he drives a bus, you know, for Vault Hunters only, you know. But all in all, it held my attention, just because it was Borderlands. There were little nuggets of things, you know, for gamers, if you've picked up on it. For audiences that have not played the game, I've heard a lot of comparisons to Guardians of the Galaxy, which I totally get that. I totally see that. Would this be better if Guardians of the Galaxy never existed? Debatable. But you're trying too hard to be Guardians of the Galaxy, ultimately.
Interesting.
And I would rather just go watch Guardians of the Galaxy.
Worst video game adaptation ever,
No.
Kage?
No.
It's
No.
Not the worst.
but it ain't the
No,
worst.
because we
Not the
have
worst.
anybody who's been paying attention, video game movies typically don't do well. Every now and then you have ones that are pretty good. The Mortal Kombat movie, both the 1995 version and the 2020 version, I believe that we had, those were pretty good. Not knock it out of the park good, but they were good. They were entertaining. I like them. That's what we go to the movies for, right? To be entertained. We won't talk about Annihilation. That was a dumpster fire. Street Fighter back in '94. Bad. Very bad.
They're bringing that back, by the way.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
So,
they're doing another live action Street Fighter.
here we go.
30 years, that's our
yeah,
launch point.
Yeah, the video game movies just have a terrible, terrible reputation for being
Solid.
just, well, bad.
Oh, okay.
Solidly
Well,
bad.
solidly bad.
Solidly
yeah,
terrible.
yeah. They're just bad, and this does not break
I think
that
you
curse.
had a great review there, honestly. I thought that was a pretty good review of the film. I thought
Yeah.
it was honest.
Yeah, because I can give you the positives, and I can give you a
I
ton
thought
of
that was very objective.
ton of negatives. I try to be
especially because you like the game. So who better than you to say that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if you know all the games. You know, you see people saying, "Oh, it's the worst thing ever." It's like, but hey, sometimes you got to bring it down. It's not about the clicks all the time.
Yeah,
guys.
there-
Let's be objective here. If the
there
movie
was,
wasn't good, hey, it wasn't good. But is it the worst movie ever? That's a stretch.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say before I hand it off the buttons is a lot of the parts, the best parts, the funniest parts were actually shown in the trailers.
Wow, interesting.
We talk about that all the time, trailers showing too much.
yeah.
There's only been, 2 trailers that I've seen in rotation online and
Right.
in theaters for Borderlands, and unfortunately, most of that they showed was
All the
right
good
in the
parts are in
trailer.
the trailers. Wow.
Yeah, the funniest parts, the jokes fell flat. They showed, I can talk about this because it's in the trailer, but Crapchap getting shot up and it shows him pooping out bullets or bullet casings or whatever. And I'm like, I can only laugh so much because I'm like, I already saw that in the trailer. Or driving through the piss.
Gulch Galley.
Yep, I already saw that in the trailer. And unfortunately, those were the
Doesn't
funniest.
surprise you at
It's
this
in
point.
my mouth.
Yeah, I was like,
Okay, yeah. You're always trying to lead into another comedic point in the film,
Right.
but if it's
Yeah,
one
there
weak
was-
joke that doesn't lead into another, now you're like, all right, we're bored
Oh.
here.
and
Yeah, like that.
I'm sorry. This thing I will say, there's a scene where they throw a grenade, and there's like, there's a grate. Okay, there's a bunch of guys on a grate. They throw a grenade, and it's gonna take out all the guys, that are standing on the grate. Well, my friend who I went to go see it with made a great question. He goes, "Why didn't they just take out the grate, and they all fall in?"
Right.
So it's like, what was that? And then
Illogical.
Yeah, and then and somebody referred to as Tanis in one scene, Tanis.
Oh, wow.
I cringe so hard. Like, it's right up there with Ong.
Yeah,
Ong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that from the M. Night Shyamalan movie?
your boy.
Ong. Ang, you dumbass. But, but you don't mess with fan bases. But yeah, that's all I got to say.
What do you think, Buttons?
Yeah, so I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. There wasn't really a whole lot of redeeming qualities to this movie, guys. For me, no, it was not the worst movie I've seen all year. I personally, think that's gonna probably go to Madam Web, which to me, I barely made it through that movie. But this movie, I know, I'm gonna, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this. So I took my nephew to see this movie, and I asked him what he thought. And I think this speaks a lot to the movie as far as what their target audience was. He really enjoyed it. He liked it a lot. I mean, I asked him because he had seen Deadpool and Wolverine. I said, which one do you like more? He said, Wolverine and Deadpool, obviously. Because, I mean, yeah, why would you pick this movie over that? I mean, kid would have to be crazy. I'd have to get him checked or something. But he gave it like an 8 out of 10. And I think, maybe the jokes weren't hitting for me, maybe because I'm not the target audience. Maybe they were targeting like that preteen age range. But I mean, he was like, hey, it really, the world looked crazy. I really enjoyed the set design of the world. He's like, it made everything look crazy and out of this world in terms of the interactions between the characters and the bad guys. I think to me, he was kind of comparing it to like Mad Max in terms of the level of insanity in the characters in that. Because you do have Tiny Tina, who, is targeted as being this little psychotic ball of energy. And then her, in this movie, he's like a protector to her, which is... what's his name? Krieg?
Krieg, yep.
Yeah, Krieg. So, and his character, I don't know who the actor is that's playing him, but his character was probably the most enjoyable for me. Like, I feel like that character in the movie, again, you don't ever really see his face. He's got just a few lines throughout the entire movie. He's just a physical character. Like, he's there, he throws maybe a couple one-liners out, and the rest of the time he's just like this big brute guy who's there for almost like the comic relief. I thought his comedy was funnier than Claptrap or Kevin Hart's one-liners that he had a couple.
Yeah, I agree. That's something. So the character Krieg, he's a psycho.
Right.
And in this universe, there are the bandits, as it were. They're all psychos. They all wear masks. That's kind of their thing.
Right.
And Krieg, the fun part about playing Krieg in the game is that he has a lot of one-liners, but the thing is, he's actually insane. So the when you're fighting, when you're playing in the game, he's either talking to himself or you hear his inner monologue. It plays that for the player, and his inner monologue sounds different than what actually comes out of his mouth. So he has these insanity fits where he just says random stuff. So I would have liked to hear more of that, like them having a silent moment and he just says something out of pocket. But it's really scary, the stuff that he says, like, oh, you know what I mean?
That's
But
dark.
like, just to reemphasize the
Right.
fact that he
He's
is
insane.
a psycho.
Right.
You don't reason with him. He's the dog you let off the leash when things get a little too out of control.
Right, and so that's what I was saying is like his character to me was probably the most enjoyable. You know, I do think that whoever was that wrote the script for this, they were trying to be true in terms of the set design, but as far as the script for like what the characters were saying, I don't know if they were just forcing the jokes in there just to try and get laughs, or again, maybe they were just targeted at a younger audience, because I chuckled maybe like 2-3 times throughout the whole movie, and you know, they just weren't hitting for me. I'm like, okay, it's entertaining, like I understand the humor, but it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I see what you're trying to do here, but it just isn't funny. And you know, for my nephew who's sitting right next to me, I don't remember him laughing out loud very much either. So, I mean, sure, did he enjoy it? He said he enjoyed it, which is great. You know, that's what you go to the movie for. You want to enjoy the movie. So I feel like I got my money's worth out because he seemed to really enjoy it.
Right.
But otherwise, for me, I don't feel like I got
It's
my
more
money's
of
worth.
a visual experience, not based off the
Something
writing of
else
the
I
film.
want to say
There's a
too.
lot of green screen effects
Yeah.
to me that, I mean, I get the look of it's a video game. Bright colors against, you know, actors. They're not going to be able to build all of these sets all over the place. Yes, it looked a lot like the game. I have played the first game. It looked a lot like the game as far as the visual effects. But when you put a live action person in front of a green screen that's been colorized, it's very distracting. It's very obvious to me that it's a green screen, that's fake.
Well, something too that I want to speak on, two things, is that Randy Pitchford, the CEO for Gearbox, who makes Borderlands, he acted as a producer on this film, which I'm kind of shocked by. When you make a video game movie, normally Hollywood does what Hollywood does. And whenever I hear that they got somebody from the studio on the surface, that gives me hope. It's like, oh, we have somebody, a writer or like the CEO of the company, he's going to take care of his IP and he's going to make sure those movie guys are going to do his property right. Mm-hmm. So for him to be attached to this film and it still do poorly, I'm just at a loss for words. There's a thing that he said on Twitter. He says, so what you're saying is you like what my friends and I do with our Borderlands video games even more than you like some of the biggest and best cast and crew of filmmakers on the planet we have done. I am super flattered. We're working extra hard for you on what's next. And when he said for you, he spelt it F-O-U-R. So he's dropping hints on the new game. But speaking on the movie, one thing that I'm very shocked by is that Borderlands is very violent. Not Mortal Kombat slinging intestines violent, but people getting their heads blown off. And it's a very violent game. So for being so violent, when you tell me Eli Roth is attached to it, that makes sense. He does. That's kind of his shtick. Just like explosions are for Michael Bay, or lens flares for J.J. Abrams, you know, so gore and Eli Roth kind of go hand in hand. Go see, if you're into that, go see Thanksgiving. Absolutely disgusting. A one-time watch for me. Will not be watching that again. I watched it while eating. Not very ill-advised, folks. But
I would watch that again before this movie.
I'll give you that. Happy Thanksgiving. But fatality. But yeah, like this film, Borderlands, got a PG-13 rating. There are so many things wrong with that. Mm-hmm. This is a very violent video game, and you gave it a PG-13 movie. And you gave it the most violent director you could, and still made it PG. If you're gonna call the violent guy up there, then let him do his thing. I wonder if the movie would have done better if it was more violent.
Not with that script.
But and that's an excellent point. Because even if we got the dream cast that we wanted, no pun intended for the gamers out there, but even if we got the cast that we wanted, a cast is only as good as the writing. I don't care how great your cast is. If the script is crap, it's crap. The story's crap.
And for me, the only thing that I said, and I spoke to this off mic before, and I'll just say this, just kind of wrap up our discussion about Borderlands. Recently, or earlier this year, I should say, we had Prime come out with Fallout. And Fallout is a video game adaptation, but they don't use characters that are known to the game in the series. And I think that they should have done that with Borderlands. It would have been much more successful, in my opinion, to go ahead and make it about a vault hunter, and even they could have potentially even used the same premise of this script, maybe with some alterations, to make it an introduction to the planet, to what vault hunting is, and giving it its own kind of the way they did Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, you're sitting there and you're creating a story within the world. Fallout, they created a story within the world. It would have, in my opinion, been better for them to have created new characters.
Agreed.
And thrown them into this world. Because when you first start in the movie with Tannis, or not Tannis, with Lilith, yes, she's kind of giving her background, her story, and she's making it sound like, oh yeah, I used to live here. I went off planet because this planet's a shithole, and then I got drugged back on a contract. She's a contract bounty hunter. Mm-hmm. So they're like, hey, I'm back now. This is where I used to be from. If they had created a character that was her background, that was her story, and she's walking you through the terrible things and all of the shitty things about Pandora, then that to me would have been a great story. She runs across these characters, they team up, and that's the story. That would have been way more enjoyable than what I got out of this, with them trying to use existing characters that were not a good fit for what they were in the game. And that's just my personal opinion.
Wow. So I think you guys did a good job on explaining Borderlands to our audience. I know that they're currently sitting at $8.8 million on a $120 million budget.
Ouch.
I don't think this movie's going to make $30 million. No. Terrible flop. And I actually reported about that on The Weekly. So that's out right now, guys. You guys can look into that. I talked a little more into that and kind of the stuff that Kage and Buttons just hit right now. But yeah, they really broke it down. Buttons has it at a 5.5. Kage has it at a 5. So, watch Borderlands at your own discretion. With that being said, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Popcorn Square podcast. We had a great episode. Talked about a lot of things. The strike, how that's going to affect the video game industry. We talked about SDCC, that's San Diego Comic-Con. Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Dr. Doom for Avengers Doomsday. And then we talked about Fantastic Four and what we kind of expect from that. Obviously, the more information we get regarding these films, because they're not coming out anytime soon, I'd say, we'll definitely discuss, especially Fantastic Four. I think that's due out summer of next year. So, yeah, we'll talk about that. And then we talked about Borderlands. Hey, guys, if you've seen Borderlands, let us know what you think. We definitely want to hear what you guys think about it. And I think we're going to pay attention to that box office to see where it tops out. I'm saying under $30 million. Kage, what you think?
I don't think we're going to get that.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be 20.
Everybody under. Okay.
That might.
Right,
I think that might be generous.
Taking the under. All right, guys. Like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell for notifications. Keep watching the Popcorn Square podcast and The Weekly. We got this episode dropping, a new episode dropping on Monday. So be watching for that. Share with a friend. And as always, be safe. I'm Neff signing off with
Kage.
And
Buttons.
later.
Late.